Hi, Chase with My Swing Golf. I'm joined here with Monte Scheinblum. Monte was the 1992 World Long Drive Champion. He's a top instructor down in Irvine, California. He's a My Swing ambassador, has worked with our system for a couple months now. In this video, we're going to talk about pelvis sway thrust lift and ribcage sway thrust lift. These graphs were just recently added with our software update. So just a quick little overview of terms. Pelvis, when we talk about sway in both pelvis and ribcage, so sway is movement toward and away from the target, linear movement toward and away from the target. Thrust is movement of the pelvis or ribcage toward the ball or away from the ball, often referred as early extension. Even some people call it goat humping. I had to say it.
Yeah, you did.
And then the purple is lift. So this is obviously vertical movement up and down. With these graphs, this is the first time Monte's seen this graph with our system. It's a bit intimidating at first, but what we're going to talk about is, what each movement means during the positions of the swing, and Monte's going to talk about, what the value means for each position, and also just try and kind of generalize the terms in a way that you guys can understand. So if we take the avatar to the address position, so obviously you can see that all those values are at 0 right now. So let's take it to the top. So green is sway, yellow is thrust, purple or pink is lift. So as you can see here, Monte, this is my personal golf swing. I've got just about three inches of sway towards the target.
Yeah, just a little bit of this.
A little bit of rotation. Some people calling it left load.
Left load, yeah.
Thrust, I've got negative, so I actually move away from the ball.
And that's going to be indicative of somebody that's got a really good depth to their hip turn.
So deep or depth meaning like a deep pivot,
right.
Lots of rotation.
Lots of rotation.
So if somebody that doesn't turn enough and kind of goes this way or extends this way, obviously that's moving towards the ball.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move almost 2 inches away. My pelvis moves 2 inches away from the ball at the top of the backswing, and then lift. So I actually move down an inch. So what would this be indicative of?
Just a little bit of a squat, because you're so tall. And you and I have talked about this many times. Because you're tall and you have short arms, you'd need clubs that were like this long, and it's just going to be too heavy.
Sure.
So you're essentially playing with golf clubs that are too short for you. So you're trying to get in position to hit the ball.
So with a pelvis that's moving down and away from the ball, so down in relationship to the ground in the lift part, and then thrust away from the ball. Would you say that I'm using the ground? Would you call that loading? Am I
Sure.
Is there a little bit of a squat there?
A little. Anytime there's a squat, I call it. This is my term. I call it grabbing the ground.
Okay.
And there's a lot of information about ground forces and using the ground,
Sure.
and the swing works from the ground up and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely whenever you're going this way, you're grabbing the ground, and whenever you're going this way, you're pushing off of it.
Okay, let's just go ahead and take it to impact. So I moved about 3 inches off the ball in the backswing, at the top of the backswing, and then I moved about an inch and a half to impact. A little bit of a load, so I load just a little bit left in the backswing, and then I slide just a little bit forward.
And you want some.
Sure.
Some. Again, what the correct number is going to be very, very general, but in my opinion, a little bit of load left is okay. I'm more of a let's load a little bit right kind of a guy.
Well, and just to piggyback to that point, I'm hitting an 8-iron, so I'm going to hit down on an 8-iron more than I am a driver.
Yeah, you're not going to really load in your right side.
And
too
I'm not
much.
trying to hit this 8-iron as far as I can. I'm trying to hit it a specific distance. Right. So if we stack a little bit more left, I can get away with it versus with a driver.
And if you were hitting, let's say you were hitting this 8-iron, starting a little bit forward, you're trying to bring the ball flight down and hit it into the wind, we'd probably see even a little more load that way.
So you see again, we're still with sway. So I load a little bit left in the backswing, and then I moved a little bit more forward.
Everybody's got to move a little bit forward.
We have to go forward at some point, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty typical with what you'd see with average to better players.
Right. So you're where you see that is this move.
Yep.
You know, whereas if you were a slider, which I'm not a big fan of, we probably would have seen your number instead of being 5, maybe closer to 10, 8, 9, 10.
Well, and the other thing, would you agree with this statement? You got to be a little bit careful with seeing. You see 4.9 at impact, you might think, "Wow, I moved a lot.
No.
I have a lot of slide."
No.
Well, but you also have
move
to
this way.
You have to take into account the fact that I load a little bit left in the backswing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now thrust. So I believe if I recall at the top of the backswing, I'd moved down about an inch.
Yeah.
And I've actually moved, or not down, I'm sorry, away. I've moved away from the ball just about an inch, and coming into impact, I've moved a little bit more, so I'm moving this way.
That's great. You're creating space to pivot your body and rotate your arms out in front of you.
Okay.
When you start seeing that number get way into the positives, that's not going to be a good sign.
Especially early in the downswing.
Absolutely.
Right?
You see a lot of people who have this move when they start the downswing. They call it, maintain. Oh, you just got to maintain your spine angle.
Sure.
That phrase has almost no meaning. Yes, we're talking 2D again.
Yep. 2D versus 3D.
2D versus 3D. So it's like, if you want to talk about it in 3D, you're in forward bend. Then when you rotate your shoulders, you're in left tilt. My spine moved a tremendous amount there.
Right.
But there's an appearance from 2 dimensions that my spine angle remained constant.
Sure.
So it's the same thing. When you go from left tilt, now my spine angle is still constant. We're not going to see any positive hip thrust if you do that.
And it'll actually sometimes it'll
even go that way. You see a guy like Trevino where his first move down is he's going this way. Yep. We're going to see a big negative number there.
Kind of a squat, flexing of the hip. A little bit working back.
Absolutely.
A little bit of anterior pelvic tilt.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of that move.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so lift. So in the backswing, I had moved down a little bit with my pelvis. I'd set down into the ground a little bit, I guess you'd say. And I think it was just around an inch, something like that. Mm-hmm. And here you've seen I've moved up about an inch. So
you need some up because you're going from a forward bent position here into what we would hope would be a fairly neutral position. You can see my belt buckle is higher.
So what you're saying is to get to the finish, so I'm going from a flexed position where I'm working down, and then I have to post up at some point. If we stay in flexion, it's going to look like this.
It's going to look like that, and that's a back issue waiting to happen.
Right. So talk to us a little bit about, this is the first time you've seen the graph, and anytime we have a graph with 3 curves on it at one time, it gets a little busy. And a lot of people see these curves, and they're automatically intimidated. What would how would you describe this graph to them in a way that, one, you're going to use it and they wouldn't be afraid to use it?
To me, first instinct, I'm looking at this graph and I'm going to want to see, an upward trend on the green, on the sway.
Okay.
And you're not going to want to see that thing go down and then up, because then that's going to look like this.
Sure. Too much movement.
You want to see kind of, a nice,
And you might want to see a little bit of a load in the backswing, depending on the club, depending on the player.
Absolutely,
Okay. So loading sway would be moving. It would be moving down into the negative, which means it'd be moving away from the target.
Right. So and you just want to see a nice, steady, because you don't want to see that.
Sure.
The big slide. Good swings are just going to be a steady little movement toward the left, and that's why that graph is going to go up this way.
And as you can see here too, we're comparing this to the avatar, and we're also looking at the values. We are looking at the curves, but we've been talking mainly to the values at each position. So even if you're not comfortable with what the curves are supposed to look like, what a good curve is versus a bad curve, at the minimum, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at the minimum, you can see the values at specific parts of the swing compared to really good swings. Say if this was one of my better swings, now we have a blueprint, for lack of better words. We've got a blueprint for when I'm swinging at my best. And say I just played one of my best, I hit it, played really well in a round and hit it really great. We capture my swing with the My Swing system and see that I'm sliding about 4 to 5 inches toward the target at impact. It's something that now I know the ranges I need to stay within.
and again, you know, instinctually, I want to look at this graph, and I don't want to see any severe peaks or valleys in any of those graphs.